I'd like to call to order the special session, budget session of the Delaware County Board of Trustees on November 6th, 2019. And we have today our first up, and last up actually, our facilities director, John Melvin.
Morning.
Morning.
Also with me is Randy Ormeroyd, our
Randy.
maintenance coordinator, and obviously Brad Lutz is here to help. So,
I've got the computer.
Obviously, I guess to where to start, as highlighted in the openings, we are requesting 2 new personnel for the lands and buildings in the maintenance division. And specifically, a new general maintenance worker. Probably bring on toward the last half of the year, and an additional painter. So with the additional buildings and additional buildings coming online, square footage, we're just getting an ever-increasing workload. We're finding it harder to do in-house projects, little projects. We're just having to contract out, because just doing the day-to-day maintenance and preventive maintenance is tying up all our guys' time. Maybe I haven't really talked too much, Brad, even about this. We're having a little change of philosophy in our maintenance workers. In the past, we've focused on trying to hire we call them maintenance specialists that have an HVAC license, do all the HVAC work. Really, taking a step back, looking at that, we have six specialists currently who are excellent workers on the HVAC. We feel a better direction is bringing more general maintenance workers to help them. Those workers can do more of the preventive maintenance, the filter changes, checking the belts, greasing pulleys on the HVAC equipment, and as well as general maintenance work. So trying to diversify our team a little bit as we bring on this additional square footage with the Bixby campus and everything, to focus more on the general maintenance workers. So that way we have the specialists who can handle when we get into a tear down of an HVAC rooftop unit or something like that. And then the general maintenance workers can help them and be more of assistance to them. The other issue we're having is just keeping up all this additional square footage is in just painting and that type of work, hanging pictures and stuff like that. We utilize our painter for that. We do for the hanging stuff to avoid people from punching holes all over our walls and then having to come back and patch them. But generally when a lot of times when we have a turnover in employees, especially the Hayes building, we like to get in there. It's a good time to get in there and paint the offices, refresh them. I think Randy in this coming up in the capital projects, there's some smaller projects, getting out and painting the EMS stations. Just typical work like that, we need to keep up on to keep our buildings well maintained. We don't want them to fall in, to not look in good condition. And a lot of times a fresh coat of paint goes a long way for that. So any specific questions, Randy's here to help answer in those 2 topics.
Any questions?
I guess just a comment. If we hire 2 additional employees, we should see the outsourced
Hopefully we
expenses
can
go down.
Yep. And then get to, we're also having trouble getting some of this outsourced work done. A good example is juvenile court wanted to remodel their reception area down there. Wanted to move up, just simply move a wall, redo some counter work. We started looking at this project last year, Randy did, thinking we could do it in-house. We just haven't gotten around to it. And then the other problem is getting local contractors in here to do these small projects too as well.
Yeah.
That's tough even.
And the other problem we have too is, I've calculated up, we're responsible for over 500,000 square feet now. So between those 6 specialists, they're responsible for almost 90,000 square feet. So, and any of the preventive maintenance or anything with that. So if we break that down to that, and then if one of those are out, which I do have one out on FMLA now, our, small projects and stuff, even just put up a small wall, we don't have the time to do it. So if we're able to start, bringing in a general maintenance worker like John's saying, with that assistance, then, they can take care of this lighter stuff, and the specialists can really concentrate on, getting all other stuff and, completed, on time.
My comments, I'd like to see in writing where the savings are. I have a prejudice against adding people because we have peaks and valleys, and I find it's more economical to use contractors when appropriate because you use them when you need them. And I'd rather have a little overtime that we can control and it's when you need it. So I'd need more detail before I could support it.
Okay. Yep. We're not, we're not seeing those valleys. I went through, obviously, we use the facility dude work order system. Just out of curiosity, the number of work orders, the 3 locations, 3 buildings we spend the most time in by work order volume, obviously is the jail's number 1 by far, just given the nature. The other 2 is the Hayes Building, and the third one is the new courthouse. So even though it's a new building, we spend just as much time in that building as we do the Hayes Building. And a lot of it is the preventive maintenance work we have to do to maintain these buildings. So,
Yeah, I would make the case that a lot of the work that we're talking about doing with these workers is work that's really based more on square footage versus any sort of other metric.
age or,
Yeah, I mean, it's really all about we're adding square footage, systems are becoming more complex. Obviously, there's just a lot more to stay on top of course, with even buildings that have been recently renovated, like the historic courthouse will be. There's still a significant amount of work that'll need to be done by maintenance in that building, even though it'll be new. The other thing too is, and this is a kudos to the maintenance department, I get 0 complaints about the maintenance department. I mean, absolutely 0. The only complaint I get is not about quality, not about getting the job done right, none of that. It is timing. There are a number of projects that are sitting out there in the work order system for, unfortunately, long period of time that aren't being taken care of. And that is a result of a combination of 2 things. One, like they just said, getting the contractors in to do the work that contractors can do. We can't use contractors for preventive maintenance, and that's why we have maintenance staff. And then the other part is, of course, their staff not being able to get to some of these jobs that they could get to. But even if using a contractor on some of these small jobs, there probably isn't a huge cost difference between the 2, like putting up a wall, for example, or that sort of thing. If anything, I would argue that maintenance could do that cheaper than a subcontractor could do. So that's really where we're at when it comes to staffing the maintenance department. John and I have had a number of conversations, and it really just deals more with the building inventory versus
Yeah.
work coming through the buildings, per se.
we are trying to ramp up a little bit for anticipation of the Bixby complex coming online. We bring that online, and we are looking to offload a couple buildings, but it's not going to be, we're still looking probably a net add of close to 150,000 square feet. When we bring the Bixby in 2 years, hopefully less than 2 years now.
And of course,
Yeah,
Bixby requires maintenance today.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's
Yeah.
not.
Which is another, just go, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, kind of to Commissioner Merrill's point in your comment there, we don't want to staff up and in the interim, knowing we're going to get rid of several buildings, and so without studying the impact of, okay, if we get rid of 4 or 5 buildings, what's that going to do to the maintenance workload?
Sure.
And then also, another comment, we took over the DD facilities.
Yes.
Maintenance, and I don't know, what's that, 90,000 square feet or something?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And we get reimbursed for that?
Yes.
And that's included in here, I assume?
Pardon me?
The revenue or the
That
reimbursement?
actually comes in, they pay, it's a memo transfer to deduct off our salaries.
Okay, so it comes out as a reduction of salaries? And that's been in place for a couple of years now, we've been doing that,
It's
haven't we?
3 years now.
3 years?
Went on 3 years.
Do you have any others in the pipeline? Anybody else you're talking to about?
No, really
taking that?
don't.
Okay.
I mean, that's been a good arrangements. We've really been able to help them. And a lot of it has helped them establish good preventive maintenance. They have issues down there in that building. We've helped get a little bit of a handle on, but there's, some larger issues there too as well. But yeah, that's definitely been beneficial to them. It's, part of the impact too, again, the square footage that we're trying to maintain, so.
Okay.
And my comment there, which I've made before, I fully support shared services. My concern is, unless we do it routinely once a year, are we looking at the cost? Are we making sure we're getting reimbursed? And not just for the direct cost, there's also overhead cost. If it takes time from one of you or somebody else, that's got to get factored in that number too. They're still better served, but we need to legitimately determine what those real costs are, not just the direct cost.
Sure.
And the other thing that'll benefit the county too is if we're able to, diversify a little bit and bring in general maintenance workers, there's still several hundred work orders or PMs that we have not, we've just been, taking care of them reactively. When our door maintenance, we've got thousands of doors, and right now, we're just taking care of them as needed, because, we don't have the staff to do that. So, that's key control, just, the whole factor of, the doors and, some window.
If we have to add a person to do that, or three-fourths a person, then that three-fourths or half or whole person needs to be reflected in our charges to DD. I guess I'd like to see some summary of how we're doing that and how we are covering those costs. And that's an exercise we should be doing every year. And that includes benefits, of course, not just
Yep.
salary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our labor rate, includes all the benefits.
And again, more than just direct cost.
Just overall, just moving on, touching on the lands and buildings, it's just actually a minor decrease in our materials and supplies. We're looking at trying to, minor increase in the service and taking into account, we are now owners of the Bixby campus, and we're having to pay those utility charges. We're maintaining minimal heat to keep, minimal utilities out there, but we still have to keep it conditioned. We don't have any
Sure.
pipes freezing or anything like that, or any deterioration of the building itself. So we are now paying for that building too as well, so.
Did they take a lot of the stuff out of the building, I assume?
Yes,
when
it's
they
pretty
moved
well,
it?
it's vacated, it's empty. We're actually starting to utilize a little bit for storage. We tried to help Board of Elections out. They had some surplus items they needed some elbow room in their warehouse. So we've been able to do that. Actually, one of the out barns, the engineers started storing their mowing equipment in it to get it out of the weather for the winter. So they're, utilizing where we can, so.
And John, the evidence area where they currently keep their stuff, I don't know what their lease is, I have no clue when it expires. Are we coordinating, make sure we're prepared to move the stuff when that lease is up, or is it on month to month, or do you know?
I have no clue. I'd have to check with the sheriff's
But
office.
we need to coordinate that. We wouldn't want to enter a new lease unnecessarily just because of a,
Or anything they do, need to go to month to month. That area is part of the renovation in the existing building, so.
Yeah, I'd feel pretty confident that the sheriff will stay on top of that. But
Yeah.
We'll double check with him, but,
again, I don't have no information, just making
yeah,
observation.
obviously the sheriff is more than aware of rough timing of when the Bixby campus will be done, and of course, they'll have a whole new evidence storage facility as part of that, so, but we'll double check that.
Okay. Just touch real quick on Service Center, the county garage. Biggest expense in there is fuel. Looking at trending this year, it's pretty flat line, so I'm kind of carrying that same flat line across. Again, budgeting a little bit more in service and charges than materials and supplies, again, having to outsource a lot of, especially the EMS work and stuff like of that nature, so.
And I should note that on their forecast for 2019, they're forecasting to spend almost all of their appropriations. So, in other words, if there's an increase or a decrease here, it's being accurately reflected based on 2020 expectations and not in addition to the appropriations of 2019.
I am going to have to come before you with a transfer in the service, from materials, supplies, to service and charges for the service center, so. Any questions about those particular budgets?
Going back again to the 2 extra people that you might want to hire, do you have any estimates on cost?
Yeah,
maybe it's in here and I'm not,
No, we
No,
don't, we
it's-
don't provide that level of detail
okay. Okay,
readily, but of course, we can always get that for you, and with any position, just let us know, but he's got here.
Yeah, general, the painter is roughly 37,000 a year plus benefits.
how much?
37,000 a year.
Okay, okay,
The general maintenance worker, roughly 41,000.
okay,
But
Okay.
plugged into
okay.
the salary spreadsheet, plus benefits.
But that'd be for a full year?
But that's the full year. That's for
Yeah.
the full year. That's not what it was budgeted. Budgeted was half year for the
Yeah.
general maintenance worker.
Okay.
And likewise is .85 for the painter, knowing we can't.
I mean, I would think that's a very modest request that I would support with the enormity of the square footage we have. We're gonna, I mean, so we might lose some buildings, but then we're also gonna be gaining square footage plus. I mean, getting contractors in, you know, you start weighing that with the cost of having somebody on staff that can do the job more quickly. If you're having trouble with a delay in contractors, I mean, this is, I think it's a good idea. And you're doing a good job, too. I'd hate to have your job. Gosh. No,
Yeah.
yes, that's great. No, thank you. I mean, so much of, and please thank the staff, too, because so much of what they do is unseen by us, but yet they keep everything.
Try to keep you comfortable.
Yes,
Not too hot, not too cold.
comfortable
And that's the
and
challenge.
things,
challenge.
yeah, right. Yeah, very challenging, I'm sure. Any other questions? Okay, that's it.
Okay, and I guess now moving on to the capital,
Okay,
permanent capital
Commissioner
budget.
Lewis.
Oh, capital.
Commissioner Lewis.
yes,
I have a
sir.
comment. I think that with the new staffing, I think, and I know we have a work order program, but I think we need to have a, routine, we need to track the projects and to make sure that we're driving those projects. We need to treat internal projects like capital projects where we're externally, I'm not sure, we can sit down and talk about a methodology. I agree with Brad's comment, we don't get complaints about the quality, it's always the timing. And the jobs that you guys do are, you're basically internal customer service for everybody. And so I think that with the additional labor, the expectation of productivity, and maybe we work through the backlog on projects and find that staffing isn't needed and that if there's retirements in the future, they're not filled. But I think we need to just to add staffing and say you guys are working on your projects and getting through it there should be some, I don't say accountability, but there should be some tracking of the projects and we should see them moving through, so.
With training, backing up again, with the training then, I know you've increased training in
Yes, absolutely.
various areas. Could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, I touched base, we're actually working with Brian Gallagher, Director of Safety and Security. We do a weekly training, actually did this morning. We've gone through some major training at the beginning of the year, after the beginning of the year, hit some specific safety training, and now what we do, Wednesday mornings, we have a video from Brian, from a BWC. This morning was specifically it was handling compressed gas cylinders, stuff like that. So we are doing a weekly training meeting with every guys. And then we've done more specific training. Randy has focused on, especially some of the guys with less experience, getting them to some more specific training on boilers and HVAC system. So we have increased our training line item a little bit, taking that into account and trying to make sure our guys are well-trained. Want to add anything?
Yeah, and, because I go through and, we've been starting to use a company, TPC, and, they come in, to the state a couple times a year, and they've got a very wide range. And, I went in and looked at their, reports and stuff and had good stuff. They sent me some, samples of, of their trainings, and then sent one of the more experienced guys, to the trainings first, and, come back, very positive, and, they brought stuff out of that training, more as refreshers, and, with the newer folks, getting them in. Because, I'd like to be able to take them and, put them on a building and, with one of the experienced fellows, but, we don't always, aren't able to do that, trying to take care of, the daily work orders. So with, a couple-day class where it's just focused, almost
good.
16 hours of, hands-on and, video training and, practical experience, and then other folks, sharing their experiences, everyone's come back with, very good, positive results, and, and we can see it in their hours on work orders. I track all that information to see how they're doing and talk to them, is it helping? Do you understand, better now? So.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Yeah, if there's any training you need, any training requests that are budgetary, let us know. Yeah, so important. Thank you. Okay, now, to capital, huh?
Yeah, so for this part, I would ask that you move to your permanent improvement and capital tab, which should be the second tab in the book. That's just the easiest place to start, because Karen and I did an overall capital worksheet here. We're going to be focusing, at least right now, on the Fund 401, permanent improvement.
Go back in the beginning.
Oh, at the beginning. All right, just a second. Oh, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, thank
No,
you.
you're fine. Just want to make sure everyone's there. Mike, did you get it? So,
5 minutes later.
so on the 401 at the very top there, just a quick rundown of what we have. As of 10/17 of this year, we had $727,000 in that fund. The remaining projects that we would expect to pay from that fund through the end of the year are listed below: wayfinding, Honeywell, Sellers Electric, giving us an estimated cash balance at 12/31/19 of $679,000, really $680. 2020 estimated revenues, these are what is paid from the 0.10 rather mills of property tax go into this fund. So the 2020 estimated revenues are $768,681, which leaves us a total balance that we have available to potentially spend from that fund of $1.45 million, rounding up. John and Randy presented a list, which is the next page, on page 2, of projects that they consider 2020 priorities. That list amounted to $2.57 million, so obviously we don't have all the money available to do all those projects. So what Karen did was basically, these projects were listed in priority. So Karen basically took the number of projects just down the list until it got to a number that we could afford effectively to pay from that fund. So everything that's top with the budgeted amount is what we believe can be done in 2020. Everything below are obviously important projects as well, but would either have to be delayed until 21, or other monies would have to be transferred into this fund. So saying all that, I'll let John / Randy go through these projects to emphasize their importance.
Well, the first two are actually the wayfinding projects, or Jane House's projects, so don't have much to address on that. Might as well pass this out now.
I'll take care of it.
I know we talked about this last year. We have to do our due diligence. It is our number one project, based on maintenance need, is the Willis Building parking lot and lighting upgrade. So, talking with Brad, yeah, we still have to present that as our number one project. We know there's been questions about that. So Brad has kind of prepared this little presentation, just kind of go over the bullet points on this. I know there's questions. I know statements have been made about getting rid of it. bottom line is, I don't have any place to put 30,000 square feet of, well, actually plus of offices at today. So we need to, work on the plan to do that. So it's not something that can happen next year and the following year, most likely. It's probably at least 5 years out. So we still have to maintain this building. We have major concern about, as you can see the picture, it's the south, it's actually the darker section, the south section of the parking lot. Kind of goes over that in the history. That section of the parking lot, when we took ownership of the building, had previously been fenced off and left to deteriorate. We did minimal repairs to that parking lot in 2008. We've done some research, crack sealing and seal coating and striping of the parking lot, I think 2012. We touched about the entrance, the main entrance off of 23 was round and overlaid. So, we've been doing maintenance all along, but the south section has gotten to a point where it's just failing. If it continues in the current condition, we're going to get water infiltrate the base. We're definitely looking at having to do some pothole repairs next year, a lot of patching, just to keep it from totally failing. So again, we have to present this as our number one project. Other part of that too, again, I want to touch base, it also includes a lighting upgrade. Currently, there's just two, how tall are those, 30?
40 feet.
40-foot light poles out there. They're inefficient, they're 40 years old. They're inefficient in electricity, they're inefficient in lighting too. So we want to have a project proposed, add additional lighting throughout the parking lot, and also bring it around the south side to the back of the building to, one, for security, increase the lighting, but also more efficient lighting, so to save that. We're having problems with, again, it's over 50-year-old conduits and feeders going there. We have had several splices we've had to fix, tried just to maintain those parking lot lights. So we have a planned project to completely upgrade the lighting, which will involve trenching, cutting through the parking lots, adding additional light poles, shorter ones, easier to maintain. We have worked with the county engineer's office to develop these estimates. So they're the ones that actually provided these estimates for us and the planning too, so.
Right, and they'll, be able to run it through their, road projects, so.
So on the very last page of the presentation, that's where the estimates come in. The engineer's office estimate of $537,000 for the parking lot, $192,000 for the lights.
Those were 2018 estimates too, so
Yeah.
that's why we put a little inflation in there.
Both these projects should be done concurrently. There would be no advantage to splitting these projects over multiple years, as the trenching necessary to put the lights in, would necessitate cutting into the parking lot. So it's best to go ahead and do all that at once. Once again, just reiterating John's point about the building, obviously there's been a number of discussions about the future of that building, but given that there is no immediate plans to move either the facilities that are in there out or sell the building in any way, the parking lot just unfortunately has reached a point of no return. Crack, fill, and seal is waste of money at this point. The cracking is so extensive, the parking lot's fully oxidized. It's just, now water's getting into the base. If we don't do something soon, the base will fail, and then the parking lot will be that much more to repair. Right now, we hope, there may be a couple spots the base will need to be built back up, but right now, we would feel this would be just more mill and fill type project versus.
Just a question, not pro or con, just a question. That parking lot is much bigger than we need. It's never over half full. So is there any, and I think I know the answer you're going to give me, but is there any thought to reducing the size of the parking lot to really what we need, rather than resurfacing the whole thing, just resurface the areas we need and transition the other? That's just a question.
Yep. I'd have to look at it a little bit. I don't want to just give you a quick answer on that. We'd have to look at the leases
Excuse me.
to, hopefully we get out of the one lease. But,
Is that a reasonable question, or is it, am I just being naive, or?
no.
Well, this section, right?
Well, actually, with Big Lots, that section, they use that for the motorcycle testing.
Okay.
So
So,
we're contractually
south.
obligated for that area.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Yeah, I know when they have their, trainings and, seminars and stuff in the, meeting room at Willis Building, the parking lot, which they've got signage up there for the meetings and stuff to keep it in the south parking lot, so that we're not interfering, with the leased, property for, the retail store.
But there's, I'm not going to go in detail, but there are conversations regarding that, and the retail never uses over a third of that parking lot. So
Right.
we're really resurfacing areas that theoretically are never being used. I'm just asking we make
Yeah.
Well,
that evaluation.
So unfortunately, like, probably should have put that up there, that's my fault. The area that's in front of the rented or leased
Retail.
part of the building is the part of the parking lot we will not be resurfacing.
seal coat and
Yeah,
stripe.
with seal coat, stripe, crack fill, that sort of thing. And the entrance off 23, it was discussed that obviously that was done fairly recently, so that won't be repaired. So the part we're talking about doing a repair is this darker black section that runs along the south part of the parking lot and then around the back of the building. So, in other words, even if this tenant were to leave and there'd be an empty space there for some period of time, these parking spots, to your point, will not be utilized, but at the same time, we're not going to be replacing that section of the parking lot. The parking lot section we're talking about replacing is what sits in front of.
I guess the question is, if in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, status quo is maintained, do we have a plan how we may transition those rather than resurfacing that areas? So just
Yeah.
just part of the planning process.
Well, and to Commissioner Merrill's point, the expensive work is, do we need that piece in the very back behind like the?
That may change.
The
If
Wendy's
something
and
changed-
Sunoco, there's a piece that's way back in there that.
Yeah, where the motorcycle testing area is, and I don't think there's a lot,
So do we need to do that?
or how much we have to do. We can minimize what we do there. Unfortunately, what needs the most amount of attention is right in front of our offices there at the one-stop shop on that south section. That's what needs the most work done.
That's the part we were going to sell at one time. so-
Yeah, the part that we were going to sell at one
I
time.
wouldn't think we'd do anything there, would we?
Maybe seal coat, we'd have to look at the exact condition of that, maybe seal coat to keep it from losing it completely. Again, if something changes with the tenants up there, we can evaluate what's done in the back of the building. But until that happens, which maybe something at the first of the year, yeah, we'll evaluate, we'll take into consideration.
That's all I'm asking, is make sure
Yes.
we take in current situation and not
Yes.
as it is today, which may or may not be the case in a few months.
Yep. The unfortunate part is what was least maintained by the previous owner is right where we're currently focused, utilizing, so, yeah.
I guess I have a couple comments. First of all, it just seems like an awful lot of money for
Yeah,
what is not a really big parking lot.
the,
And again, that's just a comment. We'll work through the bidding process and get that as low as
Yeah.
we possibly can. But secondly, my point is, we rent a very small portion of this building, for county use. I mean, with the retail, with Big Lots and then the state's offices.
I mean, the Board of Election, Big Lots occupies about half, 30,000 of the 60,000
Yeah.
square feet. Title,
And BMV.
DMV, and driver's exam, they're 1,800 square feet. The Board of Elections, their warehouse and record center is still, I don't have the exact, 9,000. I think Board of Elections is about 9,000 for their office and another 9 for their warehouse, and record center is similar. So we're
We're less than half.
we're a little less than that.
Yeah.
But it's still over 20,000 square feet.
But my point is, this is why I don't like owning buildings. I don't like being a landlord, because we have to spend $800,000 on a parking lot. And we're not gonna get that back in the rent.
not in a resale.
No, but what will help us resell it, because if we don't do it. in
Oh, I agree.
materials, They're going to
It'll help.
drive the price
resell.
down by 500,000 or.
But, you know, our rents do not reflect the money we're having to put into this building or what we paid for it originally. And, you know, again, that's why, you know, I don't like being a landlord.
Sure.
As a public entity. It's not something we should do.
Especially the volume that, yes, the volume that we rent out of this building, yes.
So, anyway. And I do think there are other places we can move some of those things.
But it's not readily available today
Not-
or
not available
tomorrow.
today.
you know. That's the issue. I mean, if
Yeah.
we had a plan that we could move on something next year, yeah, we wouldn't, but I don't see that plan in the next 5 years, towards the end of 5 years, maybe.
Maybe.
But again, we're going to continue to deteriorate, and that'll just, again, bring the value of that down, because potential buyers are going to look at that parking lot and think, well, we got to redo it. No,
Yeah.
we're not going to get 800,000 back, but they could easily drive the price down 500,000 as they negotiate. Well, we got to come in and put a new parking lot in, so.
Anyway, I still am very curious to see what the cost ultimately is. That just seems like an awful lot of money for redoing a parking lot.
I think, Commissioner, but the rents need to reflect the real cost, and they don't because that parking lot is a part of the cost of
Yep.
renting. And I'm not sure, these aren't leases that we created,
No, none of them, well, I mean, the majority of the
but it does
lease.
point out why we need to be very careful about what we do buy
Yep.
and what we do commit ourselves to.
Yep.
It's easy to quarterback Monday afterwards. Those leases should have been addressed before we ever bought the darn thing. They don't seem to make economic sense.
Not at all. I mean, yeah. Yes, I'm not going to argue there's no argument on that. The majority of the leaseholder up there, yes.
We deal with the hand we're dealt.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean we can't look to plan to change it in the future, somewhere down the road.
Yeah, and I think looking at this as a liability and we need to take part of the rent and set it aside for these kind of improvements instead of, yeah.
Real estate owner would do, certainly.
If we find ourselves in that position, we should do that. Because that's taking up a lot of these other,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
we'd be a lot more
Lot of
popular with
other-
the employees if we were doing carpet and flooring replacement than.
Yeah.
than
some of those
parking lot.
smaller projects we'll try to work into in the lands and buildings, the materials and supplies, we can try to get some of them in-house. A good example is the second floor JFS carpet. We've been working on that project this year. We actually purchased the carpet. As an office comes vacant, as they transition employees, we go in, put new carpet in. So it's something, we've been able to do some of those, the real small projects like that, but we do have, finished the second and floor, one of the projects in there, the Hayes Building, second floor, third floor carpet, we'll bring in somebody to replace the balance of the third floor carpet, and the second floor is,
Second floor is the conference rooms and a couple open areas. Because some of the carpet was, changed when there was renovations there. Year fails me now, but, so I've just been breaking the building up in, when the carpets, were put in. And third floor, the majority of third floor, both prosecutors and child support, that was put in 2001 when the facility was put up. Probate court is the same, because that was a conference room. And then, probate offices, those aren't scheduled until, next year or year after, because those were part of the renovation. So.
Okay.
Could, I'm going to move down the list below that line. The Carnegie Building, the roof, are we having leak issues here?
we're losing shingles. They're blowing off, and we're having to patch them, yes. That's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate case of value engineering. Back when we remodeled this building, to save $80,000, they changed from a clay tile roof to a asphalt shingle roof, which we are now is at its end of life. So, and that cost is, you were looking at steel.
Yes.
Yes, that was for a steel roof replacement. So after 20 years, we're not doing this again, so.
It's the same, thing that we did to the historic courthouse, 10, 11 years ago, is, there was, a metal roof on there, but it was, a soldered roof. And that was built up in a steel roof, put on it. So, and that's what we're looking at doing on this, so that, none of us has to, go through this again.
You don't have to go through the pain of listening to us, right?
Just jump up a little bit, just to note, this HCH, the historic courthouse, the Belvedere roof, the current project over there, the renovations, does not do anything on the roof. The Belvedere on top underneath Lady Justice is a flat membrane roof. It is at, kind of at its end of the life. Kind of glad we didn't do it within the project, so we'll bring somebody in to do that roof repair.
No, I'm not sure I followed you. Either I wasn't listening or you're talking too fast. The roof over here is going to be part of the
We'll do outside,
project,
it's
or you'll
not
be
part.
outside the project?
It's not part of the renovation project going on currently. They didn't dress the roof. So that's why we have in our list, we'll bring somebody in to do the roof.
John doesn't want to see what the price of a change order.
Yeah, we're definitely not, yeah,
So it will become part of the project.
outside of it, yes.
I'm just trying to understand what you were trying to say.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's part of the overall renovation, but it won't be handled by Altman.
Yeah.
In short.
yes. So, again, we give you the priority list, knowing we're not going to get through this list. And priorities change throughout the year, next year. Some things might bump up, some things might bump down. So, Randy has a list of projects beyond this, the 2 to 5 year list of projects we're looking at too.
You'll use whatever money you give them.
Yep,
Yeah,
go as far as we can.
the carpet, I'm gonna make a comment, the same conversation I have with my wife all the time, when she thinks we need to replace the carpet in the house, and I say it's fine. So it's not, and you said the carpet is 2001, 2002.
Yes.
I understand that, but there's another question I want to ask right behind that. What is the condition of the carpet? Just because it's 15, 20 years old is not a reason to replace it.
It's at end of life.
Okay, that's, okay.
It has wear paths and yes.
Starting to get, wrinkling, failing of the backing and stuff on it.
But at least I'm consistent. I asked my wife, we have the same discussion, so.
How does that go?
And
Well, we haven't replaced it.
That's what I wondered, yeah.
we are going
Replace
to,
it.
it is a little more expensive to put the squares down like it's in
Yeah.
in here. But, this way, we're able to continue to maintain
Right.
as years go by. In the pattern areas, we can slip into an office, pull some out, put them back in there and put the new, so that it doesn't,
So we can just
Really
replace the
stand out.
worn ones and not just go in and replace all the
Yes.
carpet.
Yeah.
Another project, just maybe highlight, the Hayes building, the windows scraping and sealed. We have issues in the Hayes building with efficiency. We know there's windows that are failing, the ceiling is failing, we're getting infiltration. Went in and looked at the utility cost. The utility cost for the Hayes building is actually exceeding the new courthouse. The new courthouse is more efficient to run utility-wise than the Hayes building. So we went in, we've done, your typical energy efficiency upgrades in the lighting, but actually kind of shot ourselves in the foot. When we took all the fluorescent lights out and put LEDs in the building, that reduces heat load coming off the lights. So the lights aren't heating the building now, so we're having to put more strain on our mechanicals, the HVAC system to heat the building. We know we've got air infiltration around the windows, so that's something we want to look at pretty intensely, to look at the envelope of the building to try and increase the efficiency and hopefully bring down some utility costs too as well. So courthouse is about the same office size as the Hayes building, but it also has 2 stories of parking associated with those utility costs. And it is cheaper to run the new courthouse than it is the Hayes building.
Oh, wow.
And that also goes back to some value engineering that went into the Hayes building.
And frankly, the way the Hayes building was constructed, there's a lot of dead space in that building. I mean, I think there's just a lot of wasted space the way the building is put together, but that's my observation, but.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So we don't get full utilization of the floor space just because of the design, is my point.
Yeah, yeah.
That's no one's fault, that's just,
Yeah.
that's reality. I
Where's
have one quick
the,
comment, and The roof replacement for the Carnegie, I think it's something we might want to try to work into the,
We may look, I don't know if we can use some capital outside of permanent improvement. We've put some of these larger, in the past, into the capital budget, so.
Yeah, we could discuss moving like that project in particular into 417 fund. So it'd be monies transferred from the general fund into the 417.
or the money you're going to save on the Willis parking lot, that might help too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to present it, whether you're.
Yeah. When you mention the problems with the Hayes Building and the windows, is that the one under
That's the
exterior?
72,000.
72,000 windows scraped and sealed,
That's another.
just above the line.
Oh, that's back, we're back up.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Above the line,
Okay.
72,000. I just, highlight that there are issues with the Hayes Building. It's 18 years old, so there's some,
Okay,
again, larger maintenance items that need to be addressed in it.
yeah, okay.
Since you're talking about the courthouse, where do we stand on the air conditioning? Is that being addressed by the vendor?
Yes, I'm waiting to get an agreement back from them. They're willing to replace the chiller unit in whole, ask for us to help offset the cost for the crane rental, basically. So, fair agreement.
Well, it may not be fair, but it's probably best we can hope for.
Yeah.
They put the unit up there that didn't work well.
Yeah.
And then we have to replace it. I'm not sure that's fair, but,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a reasonable, maybe it's a better term. So, yeah, we're working on that, hopefully to get that mobilized during the winter, before we have to turn the chiller back on.
so we're going to do that during the winter months.
So, but, yeah, no,
So our only cost is going to be the cost of,
yes, approximately 15,000 for the crane
And
rental.
we'll have a new warranty on the piece of
Well,
equipment.
it'll carry the same warranty on, so.
a new warranty from this date, or is it?
No,
Installation and startup.
Okay, so we will get new credit for the additional time. Okay.
What was Belvedere roof replacement?
again, that's the historic courthouse.
Oh, that's the historic courthouse.
That we're not doing, it's not part of the renovation project going on right now.
Okay.
The rest of the roof.
Oh, wow, okay.
We're putting it in there, and again, I'm glad we didn't put it in the project.
HCS is historical.
Oh, okay.
HCA,
Oh, thank you.
historic courthouse.
Okay, good.
Got some
Okay.
abbreviations in there.
All right, thank you.
Let me ask you a question. How can we replace a roof on Station 8 for $22,000, but this building costs $485,000?
Asphalt shingles, that's just, we had looked at last year, we had looked at replacing the EMS stations with a metal standing seam roof. When they bid it out, they came in at $200,000.
I know what I'm.
So we,
I guess
obviously,
maybe you're making my point. That is,
He's
Well,
economically, we're better off replacing asphalt shingles every 20 to 30 years than spend 1/10 as much with that versus a steel roof that is 10 times more expensive.
interior.
we have to look at the
I mean,
asphalt.
that's my point, and I don't have an answer, but
Yes, we'll look at that, but,
you can replace asphalt, which lasts 30 years, for $22,000, but the metal is 10 times that. So,
we thought that metal bid was skewed too. That was more than we budgeted for. We had anticipated 100,000, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, it came back twice as expensive.
Twice as expensive we saw for the EMS station when we bid that out. We may run into the same thing here with this building. So, obviously, this is a lot more complicated, a lot bigger roof, and a historical building, so too.
yeah.
And the nice thing about with the EMS stations, they're almost like a residence, it's a straightforward roof.
Sure.
When you have the multi-levels, whether shingled or, steel,
But that's a question I'd just like to have pursued. Because, again, you could replace,
Sure.
Yeah. So,
We could bid it out
Shingle.
both ways.
yeah, that's what I'm after, is
Yeah.
both ways.
For these roof replacements, we use, it's a state term schedule, state contract, the Garland Company, who actually provides the materials, and then they bid it out to the local contractors for the installation. So they actually pre-qualified local bidders, contractors to do the work. So we can definitely bid it out both ways, and you get an actual cost comparison. So you have to make sure it is efficient, yeah, not to have Is it half as much where, is it half as much more for the metal, which will save us in the, long
No,
run?
I'm just raising the question.
Yep, that's why we did on the, excuse me, yeah, that's exactly why we went back to the asphalt shingle on the EMS station, because it made no sense to spend that much money when you can replace it 2 or 3 times. Yep.
You may run out of time and have to leave in a minute. 15 minutes to go. Yeah, yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
frustrated, I hope.
All right, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
We reached the frustration
Yeah.
point.
Well, let's keep going here. Thank you.
What's the RTU 1234 replacement, 350,000?
RTU is rooftop units, HVAC.
Oh, okay.
Jail, they're, getting to the end of their life.
And those are the original part, on the original part of the jail.
And, there again, as I had noted, when we, brought in $100,000 project, with the plumbing stuff, is the jail is its own creature because it's 3 times the use, because it never shuts down, so.
24/7, 365.
Now, the requests the sheriff made for capital, are they in these numbers or are they separate?
No,
Other than the RTU 123?
no. I mean, that's in
Roof,
addition to
floor,
whatever he
ceiling.
may have
Yeah,
requested.
no, the sheriff did not delve into these projects, no. These projects all come from maintenance. The sheriff's projects are on page 3 and would be potentially paid from the 417 fund with monies transferred from the general fund.
He diversifies his portfolio into various funds.
Well, all capital should, in my view, be consolidated in one area for us to evaluate, not a little here, a little there. I don't think it makes for a real cohesive evaluation.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I mean, it's taken Karen a whole year to teach me all these things, but I will say, though, that the reason it is set up this way is directly related to the revenues. So the 401 fund is funded by property tax. The 417 fund is funded by general fund transfers, so effectively it's general fund revenue. And then the 420 fund is casino revenue. So it is, in general, appropriate to have separate funds for different revenue sources.
But how do
To your
you, how
point-
do you distinguish which capital project goes in which fund, I guess? is my-
Once again, I've walked into this way, so I think it's just over a period of time, it's how it's worked out. Once again, the four.
So you don't have a good answer?
No, I don't.
The way it's always been done.
We've always done it.
Maybe Jen does, I don't know, Jen goes far enough back, maybe she can explain it, but,
Yeah, Jen, you know everything.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but in short, obviously, the choice was made with the .1 mils of property tax to dedicate that to facility capital projects, hence the reason that 401 fund is dedicated effectively just to facilities.
If you combined them all, and let's say it's still $1.5 million or $1.3 million, whatever the number was there, it's 2.2, making up the number, and you have them prioritized in total throughout the county, and you have 3 columns there, this is coming out of this fund, this is coming out of this fund, we could see it all on one page, but you prioritize them as a total rather than which fund we happen to put them in.
I'm not saying we can't do that, but that would be a fundamental change of how we've handled capital to this point. So, once again, because a decision was made at some point in the past, which doesn't mean it can't change, at least to some degree, although I will admit the .1 mils without our staff attorney here, I'm not 100% sure if that is by resolution or just by preference, that money goes into there. But as it stands right now, when we go to the departments and say, give us what you'd like to purchase in capital, which is, building, vehicles and monitors and stealth stats and copiers and those sorts of things, we use the 417 fund because those monies are funded directly from general fund transfers. Whereas the other 2 funds are funded by effectively tax or fee revenue, in the case of casinos, how you want to view that. And then casino revenues, once again, and obviously this is the most recent, were dedicated towards the purchase of the land and ultimately the historic courthouse. So in other words, like that money was thought of to accumulate and balance to a point it would be used towards a significant project. So in other words, we're not really set up to say a part of a building is more important than an ambulance because we don't evaluate them in that way. That's why we've kept them separate, so you could evaluate ambulances and sheriff's cars and security upgrades.
I'm not talking about the vehicles, I'm talking about the other jail improvements that the sheriff is requesting that are physical in nature. I think there were several, 1 through 3 or 4, or,
Yeah, there's a number.
Yeah, I think there was some
those are the ones I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the vehicles.
cell upgrades and things like that.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I don't have
Well-
that in front of me, but I'm just saying it'd be good to evaluate them in total about, and then we have to make a value judgment, which is more important. I'm not saying they're not more important, I'm just, when we do it in 2 different areas, then you've got to,
Well, you could, I mean, have it, the information in 2 different areas. I mean, keep doing it as we're doing it now with it separate, and then have it listed on another page and, you know, total and
Yeah.
see everything.
but
Item,
but once
itemized.
again, what we've done, once again previously, which means it can change, but is, we've said, okay, what money's coming into the
It might be
401
a result to be-
fund? That's our
Where do they
limit
fit
that
on
we're
this
gonna
list?
spend on
Yeah,
permanent improvements to buildings.
and you can keep it that way, but I mean, just if they, I think an overall picture, I think that's what
Yeah,
saying. You could do an overall picture
Yeah,
without,
versus everybody else.
without moving the money from one fund to another, and you could just see the, like a list of the capital expenditures, and, you know, with a little brackets on which funds they're
yeah, I
coming
mean,
from.
I did provide an overall capital, I mean, it's obviously very high level, under the facilities capital improvements, that passed past economic development here, past the green sheet, I think is the
Yeah,
chart where I roll up all the capital funds. So I guess that's really what you're talking about. Like, these are all, this is the 401, 417, and 420, total expenditures from all those funds.
okay,
And once again, you see that big spike because that's when we purchased Bixby campus plus historical courthouse are budgeted in there. So I mean,
Like-
that's it in total of expenditures anyways.
I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying it very well, and I apologize for that. We have some jail stuff on your list. We have 5 or 6 jail things on a different list. It'd be nice to have them all together and prioritize them.
Part of how we work with the jail, as far as funding go and the projects go, we look at the jail as the facility itself. And, you know, like being landlord, we look as we're the landlord, so whatever the building needs to maintain and operate, but when it comes to the actual operations in the jail,
yeah,
that's where the sheriff budgets, and he
Yeah.
puts his request in. Like, you know, the upgrade to the jail security cameras, you know, and the vacuum seal machine. That's stuff that they need for their operations.
Reconfigure inmate visitation.
Yeah, that's
That's
their
operational.
operations. We look at the building in a whole, the mechanical systems, you know, the building itself, and that's what we put our priority on, so just.
What if the auditor or the county engineer looked at their building as a whole and did the same thing? I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah, we do the same thing with them.
Yeah.
But-
That's how we operate. We look at the building whole. And
I think you understand what I'm saying or suggesting.
so that's why they're a little bit separate too.
Yeah. But like I said, we can, as you can see, with OpenGov, it's very easy to combine funds together and provide
Yeah.
overall picture of all the capital funds put
Okay.
together. It just, I think in all fairness to you, it would require a change in how you approach capital if you were to evaluate what are effectively like operational capital items versus facility capital items. And we just had, at least my very, very, very small amount of experience coming through last year, that just isn't how we've evaluated the capital projects, especially with how we've portrayed it to the departments who are making those capital requests as well. So, but once again, I can combine all this very easily. Thank you, OpenGov. So,
yeah. I don't want that to become, I want to do it in the best way possible. I mean, even keeping this present framework, but then just, again, putting things like, you know, here you mentioned the chart for facilities, maintenance, and garage, that's one thing. And then, you know, we're talking about also, you know, sheriff and different things, just listing like all the capital items that were, not the operational, but just the capital. You know, just just make a list. It doesn't mean you have to do anything differently, but it would be presented, you know, both ways to us, so we could see it in toto and versus, you know, part of it.
I'll have Karen do that.
Okay.
Very easy. I'll have, I can have that to you.
Probably have that in about 5 minutes. Yeah, when you get back. Thank you.
5-minute recess.
Okay. All righty, let's see. Okay, well, where are we on our list now?
That's it for facilities.
Any, do we have to go through any more of it?
We didn't really talk about the Fund 417.
Well, no, I just meant for them. I mean.
Okay. Oh,
We'll go
facilities,
to
sure.
facilities, we can transition into some conversation about the 417 and 420 funds.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Probably,
okay. Yeah,
unless they just want to provide me moral support.
I'd like to know what they're going to spend money on.
Yeah. Oh, no, thanks.
all righty, well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Karen, I'm going to call you up,
Hey, John.
provide
Thank
support
you.
of this, just in case. Yeah,
Thanks,
just in
Randy.
case we need to ask a question. Although I suppose that, that microphone's up here.
Brad, I saw Bob Singer out there. I don't know if that affects your order or not. I'm just making where he's here.
That's completely up to you. If Bob's here and you want to go ahead and bring Bob up and he can do his 15, 20 minutes.
He was standing there. I don't know where he went.
I'm sure he probably restroom or something, but we can just go through some of these things here. I think this won't take a whole lot of time because, for example, like EMS is still yet to present their budget, and I think you guys inevitably, with the director up here, would discuss some of those items in detail, just as an example. But we'll go down through, once again, how we're seeing these funds and how they break down. So once again, with the 417 fund, these monies are general fund monies. There's no other tax revenue or revenues that are directed into this fund. So in effect, what projects you approve ultimately will be transferred from the general fund as an expense line item and then paid for out of this fund. At the top, these are in no particular order. I was going to say, are they in alphabetical, but they're in really no particular order. So at the top, EMS is requesting 2 ambulances. We did 2 ambulances, I think we did technically 3 ambulances last year, right, with the re-chassis. But these are 2 new ambulances. I have asked the director, when he speaks to you about his budget, to discuss what vehicles are eligible for re-chassis going forward as well. 12 Lucas devices, a staff SUV, so those be like the SUVs you see out there, a Cradle Point, and then bringing fiber optic internet connectivity to all the stations. So that $300,000 there is cumulative of all stations that currently don't have high-speed internet. And once again, I don't want to take away any of his thunder, but I just know in conversations with him, that's due to the increased training that they want to do in their stations, which will require watching videos, maybe doing some online testing and so forth. And right now, the internet connections that they have, especially at some of these stations that are farther out, is spotty.
Oh,
at
really?
best. Yeah. And once again, he can go into detail as to what
Okay,
he's looking for specifically in there, but I just know that's primarily related to training. Moving down to the prosecutor is making a presentation to you, so once again, she can go into this in more detail, but we've been told, and I certainly don't want to speak for Eric since he's not here, but I believe Eric has told us that he agrees as well, that their case management software is woefully out of date and is in desperate need of updating or upgrading. And as we know, just you guys have the experience of this, software programs are expensive, just part of the way it is, I guess. But once again, she can go into some detail with you about the program that they're looking at, the programs they're looking at, and why they feel that this is a necessary expenditure going forward. But once again, their current system is basically out of date and not supported anymore. Board of Elections is not presenting, so if you have specific questions or concerns about these items, please let us know, and we will contact Board of Elections directly. But they have security upgrades, which are directly related to directives from the Secretary of State, and then ballot on demand system and printers, $125,000. In all fairness, the description tells me what it is, but I don't know the need per se. So once again,
I think we need an explanation. Somebody needs to give us a
yeah, I don't
page
know
summary
what,
or something, so we know what it is.
yeah, I don't know what that would enhance, if you will. Clerk of Court is requesting 2 copiers. Bob Singer will be stepping in here and be talking copiers, so we can certainly circle back on that one and see what's best moving forward.
Are these replacements or new?
To the best of my knowledge, they're new. Well, I'm sorry, they're replacing ones that are currently there with new ones. I apologize, I said that
So we're
incorrectly.
not adding, we're just
Replacing, yeah.
question.
But once again, Bob will go into some detail about how, even if we are getting new copiers, how they can be worked into a future bid. Probate Court is requesting clerical lobby renovations. Once again, Probate Court is not coming in to speak to you. I'll get some specific details on that, but given that cost, I would imagine that they were even looking at having facilities probably
Now, they're in
handle
the
that.
courthouse? Probate court,
No, that would be in Hayes.
Hayes.
hey, okay. I got you, you're right.
I do know John spoke to that a little bit. That's just a reconfiguration mainly of windows and how people approach the windows. And once again, it's a security issue for staff. This is just, once again, unfortunately, a progression we're seeing in government buildings where we're getting away from open counters and going more to closed windows, behind glass, and these sorts of things. And I know that's what that involves, but once again, we'll get some level of detail on there. The sheriff was obviously in to do his presentation. The 15 patrol SUVs that he discussed, we did confirm that those are not new additional SUVs to the fleet, that these would be replacing existing vehicles in the fleet. So, and last year, I think they requested 15 as well. Now, did we fund 15? Yes. Yeah, so we funded 15 last year. I believe the sheriff, at least from the impression I got from that, is he was going to get us a detailed vehicle list, correct? Yeah. So once you have that fleet list, I think you'll be better prepared to evaluate that number and decide what number is appropriate. Obviously, we need to buy some. It's just a matter of, is it 8, 10, 15? What is that number? Stealth stats, Karen, can you speak to that one?
They mentioned that in their presentation. It has to do with the traffic and speed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was $10,000, that probably is.
Yeah. Mascot for 9. Moving on.
Now,
What is,
when you say mascot, obviously what comes to mind? Is that
that
what
the
that
dog?
is, or is that the,
the K-9? Who's the mascot?
It's for like school resource officers and things of that nature, I think, is what they were going to use it for, so.
I guess I'd need a little more information before I could consider that seriously.
No.
No, I mean, this is a legitimate, like, costume outfit of something. We'll figure it out. We'll, if it's like McGruff the crime dog, or, I don't know, a walking pair of handcuffs.
Yeah.
I don't know what the, I don't know what it would be.
Yeah,
An eagle, maybe, it'd be like that Muppet eagle thing. Anyway, I've been watching Muppets with my son.
Like Brutus Buckeye maybe, or something?
Yeah, no, we don't need that licensing nightmare. And then finally, the RMS CAD system. This is something that's multiple departments, obviously it affects. This is the portion that is, quote, the sheriff's office responsibility, the portion that we cannot pay from the 911 funds. So there is a 911 portion to this.
911 will be coming to make a presentation on the CAD system in the next few
That
weeks.
should be, yeah, part of their
So
presentation.
I assume that'll be part
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, so when they, but they can explain that, but once again, that's just it's just one of those things that unfortunately it's a necessary upgrade. I do think that by us having the dedicated 911 funds to pay for a large portion of that project, that as much as the 427 is a big chunk, don't get me wrong, that's a big number, but it's very nice that we have those funds to offset the remainder. And then the sheriff on the jail, once again, he did go over, I believe, all of these. And he provided a presentation on the, like, his presentation that I believe is all in your books now, had some discussion about these anyway, but jail cameras, CCTV monitors, I can just tell you from experience, my previous life, that, yeah, jail cameras are, the ones that we have now are nowhere near as good as the ones that you can currently get. And I'm even going to assume, although I can confirm, that these are probably wireless as well. So once again, getting away from running wires down conduits and all that sort of stuff. So, but once again, in terms of necessity, I leave that to the sheriff to decide what his priority is, and maybe that's how you'd like these handled, because they're, I mean, one's 100,000, but the rest are similarly numbered. So if you like, maybe I can ask the sheriff to kind of give a 1 through 7 priority on these. Okay, all right. So, grand total of all the capital projects requested from various departments, $3.1 million. We have an estimated fund balance at 12/31/19 of $2.1 million in that fund. The reason we have so much money in that fund is in relation to the election machines. Those monies were moved to here, but
Yeah, we originally budgeted for them in the capital fund, so the money was transferred at the beginning of this year. And then as the contracts were written, it had to be paid from the general fund. So these monies had to stay in the capital.
we couldn't transfer them back. That's a quirky thing with fund accounting. We can't, transferring out of the general fund, easy. Transferring back into the general fund literally requires almost an act of God. So it's very difficult. We actually are going to have a rescinding of a motion where we have requested monies be transferred from a capital fund back to the general, and are going to have to rescind that and take care of that in a different way. So in short, there's a yellow box there that will ultimately be filled in by a number that is necessary to fund the projects that you ultimately approve. So once again, there's 2.1 in there, 3.1 in requests. So if you were to fund every single one of these requests, we would transfer roughly $1 million from the general fund to fund these projects.
In the past, the clerk of courts has generally transferred some of their excess funds, for lack of a better phrase. Sometimes they directed a particular project, but they've done that historically every year. Has there been any conversation about what's going to happen this year?
Well, we've already budgeted for the courthouse deputy like they have done in previous years. That's already in the current budget for 2020. And other than that, that's all I'm aware of so far, so.
And then the last capital item on the last capital fund, rather, that we discuss is the Fund 420. Once again, that's casino revenue transferred from the general fund. So the casino revenue originally goes into the general fund. Once a quarter, you all approve that transfer. You'll see some costs here. So the historical courthouse renovations, that's once again a very rough number of what we expect to pay in 2020, because obviously we are going to pay some in 2019. We just need to see when all the bills flow in. Bixby campus design fees are on there. And then, so finally, that gives us a total of $9.29 million in expected expenditures from that fund. There's a balance in there, once again, an estimated balance at the end of the year of $4.7 million. We would expect a reasonable revenue estimate of $2.2 million in casino revenue into the fund. So that would require a transfer from the general fund of $2.367 million to fund those two projects and bring that fund balance. And obviously that fund balance, if we transfer that exact amount of money, would be zero at the end of the year, which frankly, for this fund, would be appropriate, because once again, the idea is we keep moving the casino money in there, letting it build up for larger projects down the road, so. And then the last page of that section are the transfers from the general fund. Once again, these tie to the three previous pages for those capital projects, 417 and 420 funds, but these are all the transfers in 2020 that we would expect to make from the general fund. Most of these are fairly regular, like principal and interest and so forth, but this is what we would expect. And as you can see, we've projected a principal and interest transfer that is reflective of the interest as we're currently receiving it versus what is estimated. We could lower that number to be reflective of what's estimated, but I think inevitably we would have to increase, do an increase in appropriations to transfer more money later. So that's really just a do it now or do it later sort of thing, but.
Okay. Anything? All righty, let's take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll put Bob on. We are now resuming our budget session, and like to welcome Trustee Singer from Harlan Township to give us a report on his report on copiers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to review the copier survey that I did with the county. First, I'd like to say that every single department, elected official, judges, all felt that this was an excellent thing that the
Oh, good.
administration was looking at. And it was received very positively. I don't know whether you have this, but we will go through, I'll go through part of it quickly and then go, into recommendations, et
Thanks.
cetera. Please feel free at any time to ask me a question or stop me.
Okay.
Or whatever. At the very outset, I'd like to say that the examples that I've included in this are primarily from one vendor as far as invoices, contracts, et cetera, and it is no reflection on the vendor. It's simply that one vendor controlled most of the copiers in the county itself.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm in no way pointing fingers or disparaging that particular vendor in these examples that we'll go through where I think maybe something
Thank you.
can be done
Brian.
differently.
Thank you very much.
First, if you open section 1, it basically outlines how the study was done. I contacted every individual or department that has equipment in the county and had face-to-face interviews with every one of them. So at that point, I gathered the information. Often, they would have to get additional information for me to complete the survey itself, and that basically just spells out. The second section lists, it's a spreadsheet of every copier, every department, and all of the particulars from the department, the vendor, the manufacturer, the model, black monthly volume, if they had color monthly volume. Do they lease it? Do they own it? What's the length of the lease? So I try to get pretty specific, so if anyone is having trouble falling asleep one night, all they gotta do is pull this out and start.
I was impressed with the quality of the work and the extent that you went through, and that's not only a reflection on you, it's a reflection on the elected officials and the directors who coordinated this in the departments, so it's well done.
So, and third section is a summary of the copier use in the county. There are 77 copiers that I was able to locate. 42 produce only black, 35 produce black and color, an average of 381,661 black copies monthly, which translates into 4,579,932 copies annually for black. Color,
Gee,
average 66,000 per month, for 795,936 annually.
Can I ask a question? I'm just curious, when I read this, because these a lot of factoids here I found very interesting. When you print something on a color copier, even if it's black and white, is it considered a color copy, or does it have to have some color in it beyond black to be considered a color copy?
Anything that has one letter in color is going to print an entire copy as color.
Okay, but if it's all black, it'll
If
be
it's all black, it's considered
considered black?
just black.
Okay, just curious.
Yep. Total annual copying costs for the county that I was able to come up with is $213,685.44. Now, that's going to vary year to year based on volumes, how much color, et cetera, but I looked at the annual amount for the county for previous years, and this falls right in line, with that. 6 different vendors providing equipment, 5 different manufacturers, and the reason is that some of the companies are selling the same product. So 65% of the county has one vendor, and that's why I shared earlier, that's 50 copiers. Lowest cost for maintenance for black, 0055, that's half a cent. Highest for black is 2.3 cents.
That's a huge difference.
Yes. Lowest cost for color is just under 4 cents, 039. Highest cost is 9 cents. Lowest cost for black or color occurred when there was a bid conducted.
Oh,
This is foretelling, or whatever the expression is, because that's ultimately what
gee.
my recommendation would be to the county, is to bid it. The highest cost per copy for black or color occurred when a single vendor provided pricing. And that often happens if a company, has worked with a department for a period of time. They trust
Yeah.
that company, they trust that sales representative, and, whatever's recommended, often they go with. The cost per copy for the same model copier varied from department to department. So basically, if someone negotiated, and this just happened, I was called last week, and someone was wanting to change, and basically, I provided some insight. I said, tell the vendor you want a fixed cost for black and color for the entire term of the lease. Call me back like 3 minutes later, because it was going to escalate 12% per year. They said, they agreed. And every 4 or 5 years, usually, a department looks at a copier. It's like, oh, it's time to get a new copier. They usually call their same vendor,
Oh,
given
Okay.
pricing, okay. And it's wonderful for the vendor and the salesperson. Unfortunately, the negotiations are the best way to get the best price. And if you think of it, in most anything, it's the same way. Oldest copier being used is 14 years old. A number of copiers were either released to the department, and they were either had copies on them. Well, obviously, if they were released the same copier, which that has occurred at a little bit lower cost, but not where it should be, in my opinion, or they were used copiers. Now, in all cases, that was put on the lease agreement, so it's not like anyone was trying to slip something through or otherwise. But, it's like if you lease a car for 3 years and then release it again for 3 years and you get a 10 or 15% discount. I just don't think that's great. Majority of the departments had maintenance agreements that escalate in cost annually. And this is historically what every vendor does. I mean, we build in, cost of living. Well, the cost of living hasn't been 8 to 10% recently, but that's what the costs are. And it's across the board. It's not any particular vendor that does it. And again, unless you ask otherwise or challenge otherwise, that's the way it will be. And it's not the department's fault or the elected officials' fault. They don't know. As I said, they do this every 4 or 5 years. Some locations did lock in maintenance costs for several years. The sanitation district actually locked in, bought the equipment outright, and then locked in pricing, I think it was for 5 years. They did it. Gina DeWitt and Mike worked with, and you know, it shows. A significant number of departments are being charged a monthly handling and shipping fee for toner. This is another, and coming from the industry, I'll call it a gimmick, if you want to call it such. This had never been done in the past, but one vendor got, hey, you know, we can make hundreds of thousands of dollars with our clients by charging a shipping and handling fee. Just like you see in the commercials, you know, it's only $14.95 plus shipping and handling fee,
yeah.
which might be $14.95 also. Copier companies have jumped on the bandwagon, and there are some examples in here. No, you tell them, we don't pay shipping and handling fees. You can have a tech drop it off when they're out servicing another piece of equipment or when they come
Yeah.
service all. And most departments didn't even realize it because, you know, it may not amount to a lot, but you take the number of departments that have this, and then some weren't being charged shipping and handling. You know, it was the luck of the draw. A number of departments have a fixed amount of copies included in their leases or maintenance agreements with overage charges where they exceed this number. In other words, they may have 5,000 copies built into their agreement. If they run 5,500, they're billed that extra 500 copies. If they run 4,500, oh well, you ran 4,500, they are not credited. You know, that's like you go to the gas station, and I mean, most people use credit cards, but you can still pay cash, and you go in and you give them $20, and you only use $14. You don't just drive off. You go in and get your $6. All right? No, that's not the way of the copier business. The only county department that services their own equipment is the engineer's office. They literally service their own.
So if they have one break down, they fix it themselves?
They fix it themselves. They'll go online if they need a part, or they'll even call the vendor and you know, order the part from the vendor or whatever. I don't recommend that.
That's what I was going to ask you, if you...
I do not.
Okay.
I mean, I would get on my knees to implore people to take a maintenance agreement, because when you're paying 0.006 per copy for maintenance and supplies, that means you're getting supplies for that, toner developer, parts, and I would tell someone, I would say, look, you know, a main board doesn't usually go on the copier, but if it does, it could be a $1,500 part. You know, it's covered on your maintenance agreement. If you don't have a maintenance agreement and you're going to pay $1,500 plus the charge to diagnose it, plus the charge to put it in, you know, so, you know, negotiate the best maintenance you can, and everything's covered.
And you'd like to think those engineers or whoever's doing it have a better, something they could do that's of a higher quality than being a fix-a-copy.
Well, yeah, plus, you know, you may have to call someone in anyway if you try to fix it. And, you know, I've got a friend that
Yeah.
does small engine repairs. He says, I hate when people try to fix their own equipment, because then they bring it in and he has to figure out what that doesn't normally go there, that part's not right. I mean, takes them a lot longer, so, you know, they've got trained technicians, plus they have what are called firmware updates those are updates like for security situations, where the big thing now is actually going through laser printers to access computer systems. Not the copiers, because most of the copier companies with their firmware have figured out most of the software situations that they can actually get in through. But, you know, security is a big thing. Okay, there are 5 copiers that do not have maintenance agreements, 2 in the Sheriff's Department and in code enforcement. Okay, the 2 in the engineers, we talked about, they service their own. The 2 at the Sheriff's Department, they were leftovers when they got new equipment, so they're just going to keep them until they have a service call and then get rid of them. And then there is 1 in code enforcement that's a really old, low-volume copier that they just, you know, it's not worth it for them. The only department renting equipment is Job and Family Services. And they were the ones that went out to the bid and have the lowest costs in the county. From the same vendor that also has the highest costs in the county.
Oh.
So it pays to bid.
Gee.
All right, statistical snapshot. There are 42 black copiers, 35 color, 77 total. There are 68 Ricoh copiers, 6 Xerox, 1 Savin, 1 Samsung, 1 Canon. Listed the various vendors. 36 copiers released, 34 are owned, 7 are rented. And then their lease terms, and I also break that out later, are either 39, 48, or 60-month terms. All leases are what are called fair market value buyout. At the end of the lease, if they do want to buy it, the vendor will come and give them what they say is a fair market value. I've told many of the departments if their equipment's running well and they like the equipment, ask the vendor for a fair market value, and then tell them you're going to go way under that. Now, if they offer $3,000, I'll give you $1,000. The leasing company doesn't want that equipment back. They're going to wholesale it off to someone. All of the ones, you know, that are Ricohs, the vendor no longer sells Ricoh. They don't want them back. So it's going to be a situation, offer them what you can. I told them I would help even in the negotiation. If they call me and say, well, they're offering this, I'll tell them what they should offer, and then they can probably get it.
Can I ask a question? It's probably just me being a little dense. What's the difference between a leased copier and a rented copier? To me,
That's just what I was going to
All right.
ask, too.
A lease copier is a lease to quote own, even though there's a fair market value buyout. A rent, you have no ownership. With a lease, you actually put your name on that document that you're acquiring it. Now, you have no intention probably of acquiring it, but the person selling it to you treats it as a sale. And they get paid right up front by the leasing company for the whole amount. A rent, you're renting it. All you do, you know, it's their equipment, and you're paying to use it.
could be
You
for,
rent an apartment,
okay.
okay? If you rent an apartment, you're not buying that
It
apartment.
could still be 3 years that you're renting it.
Correct.
It's a 3-year lease.
Correct. It
It's
can
just-
be the
okay.
same time frame, but there's no ownership implied with a rental. With a lease, if you read the fine print, you actually are purchasing. Okay? For our cost variances, let's see. Just, I've shown some examples and I've highlighted the different cost variances that you'll find if you look at, in terms of the cost per copy and things of that nature for the maintenance. I've included different examples, and I know I'm going to rush through some of this because your time constraints. But if you have any questions, again, stop. Number 5 are releases, and I've highlighted where there have been copies on, when they've released it, I've highlighted in Section 5 that in this case, Common Pleas Court had 411,000 copies on their copier and 177,000 copies, and they basically released that same equipment for 60 months. There's another one, County Treasurer's Office had 90,655 copies, and they released it for an additional 39 months at the end of their lease. So it's pretty nice if you can do that, because the vendor, all their, that equipment's paid for, basically. They're just getting additional money now. They do have to maintain it, but, that equipment, essentially, in a situation like that, as I said, if a department really likes it, negotiate a buyout. All you have to do is pay maintenance. You're not going to have a lease payment plus maintenance, and probably within 4 or 5 months of lease payments, you'll own it. I mean, basically, if you offer them $1,200 and they're charging you $300 a month for a lease, in 4 months, it's yours. So 7 is minimums included. All right, and again, these are a couple examples where, the law library, 7,200 copies were included in the lease. Actually, that was a maintenance agreement in that. So they're committed every month to paying their $65. Well, all of a sudden, next door, there's all that construction, and we have new law offices across the street. People aren't going to the law library to make copies. They made when it was right next door, they just walked a few steps, made copies.
Oh,
So now their volume's down to 4,005 a month. They're being billed every month for 7,200 because that was the agreement.
oh,
Now,
yeah.
there's another one is Delaware County Personnel Department. Well, again, it's not a big deal. It's just, and I've highlighted you agree to pay the overage rate, and then in the fine print, I mean, you need a magnifying glass. And then it says, no credit will be applied toward unused copy.
Yeah, yeah.
People don't, again, they're spending all their days reading fine print, if that's what they
That's
were.
right.
That's not their
Yeah.
jobs.
Well, and I'm sure they're trusting.
Of course. That's, when I had people, just, what do I sign? Didn't even look at the pricing, didn't look at it. Bob, I trust you, just, it's, again, that's not their function, is to work with copiers and explore copiers. Their function, whether it be the recorder's office, is documents, whether it be personnel is personnel, whether it be elections is elections, it is not to look through copier leases or copier agreements. There's, okay, let's see, shipping and handling, Section 8.
Yeah.
There's $7, and then also I highlighted down below, this is facilities. When you see 022,609 per copy, it's been escalated. Who comes in, what vendor, if I'm doing a proposal for someone, and your maintenance is going to be 022,609, they're going to look at me like I'm from Mars. Nobody comes, it might be 022, but it's not going to be 022,609. Whenever you see something like that, there's an escalation clause, because they multiply it times 8%, whatever that comes out, and that's where your 0609 comes out, or whatever. And there's the $1.07 handling charge, and that occurs every month. There's $10.07 handling charge,
Gosh.
and there are 2 escalations on that. And I don't understand this. It says shipping, handling, but they also build in a periodic rental charge for the office equipment at domestic relations. And it's $134. What they've done there is they've built in the minimum, I believe, on their maintenance, plus the handling charge. So it comes to $134.10.
Is that a month? Every month, or is that?
Yeah, but includes, I believe it includes their base charges for maintenance.
Okay.
Some of the invoices you see, I mean, I was in the business for 42 years, and I'm surprised at trying to read some of them. Because it's the way, I mean, if I'm having difficulty, think of the poor fiscal officer
Oh,
or
gee.
department personnel that are
Right.
trying, and usually, it's just
Yeah.
sign off and payment if it looks like it's about what the other month was or a
Right.
few months ago. I did, you know, even the rental agreements here, I've got a rental agreement, and it was not included in your package because I didn't get it. I got an apology for them saying, well, this we found also, I had their pricing, but this is, every rental or purchase or lease agreement goes through the prosecutor's office first. And they do a document, and then it goes to the department, and their document's signed off by George Keitza and you folks, and then there's, and those usually get filed away somewhere, never to see the light of day. But then the vendor does their paperwork. Because again, these are leases, and they have to, someone has to sign a lease for the leasing company to pay that vendor the money. Because it's like you're buying it. It's like you buy a car, you're financing it. The dealership gets the money, and you're making payments to whatever finance company it is. And it's the same thing with a lease. So the legal document is done by the prosecutor's office, but then you sign the lease that has all kinds of stuff in that, that's mystery. Here's, and this was interesting because this was a department, it was adult court services, and this is the only one I found in the county. They were running apparently a pretty low volume per month. And in the actual prosecutor's contract, it had that they would pay a maximum of $6,500 for the term of the contract. And as I said, I had a copy of the lease, so I knew what they were paying monthly. But I also found out that they were paying, that they were running like 8,000 or 9,000 copies now on it, not the 2,000 that they were running when they first got it. Well, if they've been running that volume for any period of time, at the end of this contract, they're owed money, a check from that vendor if they go over $6,500. And the rate they're going, that vendor's going to pay them more than maybe not more than they paid for. But they're going to get a bunch of free copies, a check back for, because their volume has gone up from 2,000 to like close to 8,000. It's the only contract I saw in the county like that actually put a limit how much they would pay. So I did inform the department, and they are going to try to track whether that vendor needs to write them a check. So that would be a good deal. Another thing I found, again, in the prosecutor's copy is a different price than they were being charged in the contract. And I said it could have been an oversight, but you really want to look into this because the price that was in the prosecutors was lower than the price they started with, even on copy one. And again, it could have been an anomaly. I mean, there could have been some misunderstanding somewhere, but, you know, they run tens of thousands of copies a month on this copier, and, you know, that adds up. So they were checking that out to see which was the accurate price. Again, the one was the prosecutor's copy, the other was the document that the vendor provided. So I don't know, you know, what this is exact, but they were looking into it. Well, and again, that's, you know, the way things happen. The next, basically, sheet or section 9 shows the contacts at each location, their phone numbers and their emails that I worked with. Recommendations. Number 10, any new additional equipment acquired should be rented under a program expiring June 30th, 2021. And I chose that date because that is the date I'm recommending a bid be consummated with the county.
And I assume a certain percentage, fairly high percentage, will be expiring before that
Correct.
date to make it
And I've
viable.
got that, I've documented that as well. There will be some that won't be able to enter that bid at that point because Sheriff's Department or elections, you know, that just have entered into leases because it wouldn't be practical. But I also made a recommendation that those particular units be, when they come up, if it's prior, you know, to the expiration of the next lease, which it will be, if the bid, that the vendor factor in what they are going to charge those particular departments for, let's say there are 2 years left on the bid for one. I want that, a 2-year rental as part of that bid if it's 18 months remaining on that bid. I want an 18-month agreement. I want to know now what you're going to charge. So at the end of that bid, all equipment will be coterminous, and the county then can bid all of their equipment, not just a partial. Consider buyouts of any leases that come up prior to June 2021, because it will probably be a lot more cost-effective for someone to buy out a lease and just pay maintenance through June 2021 than it would be for them to try to enter into a new lease for a shorter period of time. Explore the benefits of conducting a future copier bid. Countywide, all elected officials should be contacted to get their feedback regarding a bid. I spoke to most of the elected officials, and they're all for it, but prior, you know, to the county saying we want to do a bid, as a courtesy, just again, extend to them.
Sure.
I know we had talked about this. This is what we'd like to do, and just get their. All maintenance agreements for owned copiers or lease buyout copy, whoops, C's missing, should be bid at the contract expiration. In other words, let's say there's a lease that comes up in 4 months from now. I would say buy that equipment out and then get bids from several vendors to maintain that. Because what's going to probably happen if you just say, we want to buy it out, you know, and then you've been servicing us, continue to service it, they're going to start right where they're at with maintenance, which is probably way higher than if you do a competitive, you get 3 bids from, or 2 bids even, from people that are authorized to provide service, because there are other vendors. Any vendors including a base number of copies in their programs where minimum volumes are not being met should be consulted to determine whether they would be willing to either reduce their minimums or issue end-of-year credits. In other words, like, you know, we've got with the law library. They're running substantially less. If it's 200 or 300 copies, they're averaging under that. It's not a big deal. If it's 3,000, that's a significant number through every month to you know, be under. So, again, there's nothing legally that can be done. You can't, I mean, it was an agreement or contract that was entered into, but you can approach the vendor and say, hey, would you consider, you know, they're not running that volume? And maybe they'll say yes, especially if they know there's going to be a bid down the road. So, county, this, I should have put 12 asterisks. A county employee should be assigned to be the contact person when copy or matters arise. This person should have significant knowledge about the entire equipment process. I don't know how many people said, we'd love to have someone that we can go to actually ask questions. Because more often than not, if they don't know the answer, they just sign off on it. And, you know, I had a number of people apologize for the way they did their agreement. I said, whoa. I mean, they're apologizing to me because I'm pointing out things. I'm saying, look, that's not what you do every day. I said, I said the same thing. You do this every 4 or 5 years, and then you rely on somebody to tell you what to do. I said, that's not what your responsibilities are. It's thrown at you because somebody has to do it, but that's not their job. If they knew there was someone in the commissioner's office, like Brad or whomever, that, you know, they could go to if they had questions, and if he didn't have the answer, he could research it, or Karen, whoever, you know, just someone financially aware of this, then I think you'll start saving immediately on situations. So, whenever possible, the county facility department, or facilities, I guess it should be, should acquire equipment that's off lease or owned. And I talked to John Melvin about this. You put the copiers on GovDeals, and you get anywhere from $10 to $25 for these. The copiers have been maintained. It's like a copier, a car that's been maintained by a dealership. You know it's in good shape. It costs you more to advertise than you're getting for these. If a department doesn't want the copier anymore, he said he would be willing to store it. It's been maintained up until the last day they had it. And then if a department needs something before the bid, say, hey, we've got this piece of equipment. We'll give you some vendors to call for a maintenance agreement, and until the bid, just pay the maintenance, or you can charge them some, however you want to do it. But you'll save thousands of dollars before the bid.
Wow.
All copy and print drive, and I moved away from well, I said copy, but also more importantly, print drivers for laser printers, be absolutely certain that they default to black, and that someone, if they have a color printer, because you have one word in that, a document that is in color, and it's all color now. You're using 3 colors to make black, and black to make black. There was a career center I worked with that I thought my software was wrong, and asked them if I could redo it because they were using way too much color. And when I sat down with them in a room, and they had that nice big screen TV, and all of a sudden I'm looking at, and it hit me. All their printers were deferred to color. Every time they ran a black copy, they're using their color toner.
Oh, gee.
And I mean,
Unless you're doing a presentation or something, more than likely, a black copy is sufficient if you're just.
absolutely, well.
And it's one of the questions I've written down is how do we encourage that? So,
Well, and again, well, if someone even is, you know, there's something on the internet that they need to download, generally their HTTP, whatever that is in color. So that whole document might be in black except where it sends from, and the entire document uses color toner. So if it's defaulted to black, don't say that you can't, like, you know, you've got presentations that you have bar charts or pie chart, or whatever, that you need color. Fine, all you gotta do is click, when it says print, click color. Instead of now, and again, I don't know that that's the case or how many are like that. I know that, you know, I know the manufacturer often ships it to print color. Gee, I wonder why they would do that. But the point is, you know, laser printers they're the ones that generally are the problem. So I know you've got a lot of laser printers in the county, and just put a memo, or Steve, you know, Louis, put a memo, please be sure they're defaulting. I don't know whether he may even be able to, if it's on a central system, default all of them. And again, it's not like you're saying you shouldn't be using color. There are certainly legitimate uses for color. It's just click on color. Laser printer population should be reduced and printing directed to copiers. There are a number of locations where a laser printer is sitting right next to a copier. It's a lot more expensive, generally speaking, to run on a laser printer than it is a copier. So, you know, there are obviously, you know, legit, you know, especially in personnel or you know, areas that there's confidential HR documents and things that people are going to have it. But if it's sitting right next to the copier, you know it's not confidential probably, and they don't use the feature called secure print where you go up and then you have to put your baloney. I mean, they can do that with the copier if that's what they're doing with their laser printer. So it's generally considerably less expensive if they've negotiated a reasonable maintenance cost to run it on the copier. And you don't have 2 pieces of equipment you have to service as well if it breaks. In high-cost copier locations, discuss with the vendors if they're willing to reduce. Where prices have escalated enormously, ask maybe the vendor if they're willing to reduce their costs some. Bid requirements is the final section, and just basically recommendations when you do a bid, what to include in the bid. On the bottom where it says not included in the initial bid, even though I put the ones that are coming up, I put an asterisk like July 1st, 2021, or September. Include those. They were after the date of the bid, but they're close enough to the bid where the asterisk is, that, you know, the vendor, all they have to do is pay 2 or 3 or 4 months,
Jordan?
it's worth including those, because the vendor will pick that up. Questions?
Wow. Boy, it's amazing. This is, you've done a wonderful job, Bob. I mean,
This is very helpful.
oh, very helpful.
And this kind of gets to our thinking that we don't manage costs, we don't control costs centrally, we don't control purchasing centrally. And this was kind of our test case to prove that it makes sense to do it. And it's good to hear that you got such positive reactions and interactions with the departments and the offices.
Absolutely. And
Because, again, I think they all understand this is a way to save taxpayer money, and that's a good thing.
Well, and candidly, we hate doing this. A number of them said, we don't even like doing this.
Yeah.
If someone else will do it
Right,
for us,
right.
Hey,
great.
just
Yeah.
give somebody,
Yeah.
give me
You know.
a number to call when
Yeah.
I need something.
Well, it was interesting because I contacted the elected officials first because I felt that's where I might get pushback. Because, they can make their, zero.
It's good.
Zero pushback.
Oh, that's
Every
great.
single one of them was pleased that the
Gee.
commissioners are doing this, and it stated that, it's for the entire county's benefit.
It's a great test case, because again, I think we can apply this methodology and cost savings to other areas, other services and expenses. So this is great. And it's great to have somebody with the knowledge, because like you said multiple times, we wouldn't know
No,
the
no.
intricacies and the details of all the lease agreements that someone in the industry would. And so you've been very valuable in that way.
And I just want to say 2 things. One,
Brad, you want to come up to the,
Oh, okay.
yes, yeah, Q?
I just wanted to say that people weren't just being nice to Bob because he was in their office. Like, I mean, I didn't get a phone call, Karen didn't get a phone call from anybody saying, why did you send this Bob guy into my office? It was seen as a very positive exercise. And also, I just wanted to thank Bob because obviously with his study, but also his explanations, I do think he's educated at least me and Karen and
Yes,
Patrick
oh, yes.
to a degree
all of
that
us.
I feel like I can have a reasonable conversation with an elected official and/or purchasing person to help with copier questions. We actually have a couple offices that are actually in the midst of potentially renegotiating or negotiating leases. And I'm having conversations with them thanks to Bob's education, so.
Good. Very interesting.
Oh, my gosh.
Fascinating stuff. We'll save a lot of money because of this.
You are already.
Gee.
From some of, and just from some of the suggestions that I made,
Right.
just in the department, even to switch 2 copiers, but the same model, where one of them was being charged a considerably higher cost per copy than the other one.
Gee.
I said, swap them.
Oh,
And have the people run the volume, because one,
oh, my gosh.
Or they're running a higher volume on a lower cost per copy.
Yeah, just simple like that.
Boy, any,
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. Obviously, this is going to be good for the county, not only for this particular project, just the template that it creates for other areas. No, we would never have got this far down the road if we had not gone this direction.
Very true.
And I don't know what it should look like, but I would suggest that we at least have a conversation about some sort of month-to-month relationship with Bob that would
That's-
keep this ball moving. And we don't tie Brad and Jane down with
right, right.
things
yeah.
that, because we have an expert here available to us, and knowing Bob and how he put this together and what we were charged, we got our money's worth on this. But I think you'd be fair, and reasonable in that relationship. I just asked that maybe we ask them to have that conversation.
Yes,
Makes sense, yeah.
yes.
There's going to be a lot of issues come up during the transition
Right,
until
right.
June, and even beyond June of 2021.
right.
And things like saving on, and I had that in one of my notes, and you beat me to it, black should be the first option for things that we don't need color for, and how do we encourage that? And you already suggested a solution for that, but that's got to be education. There may be some opportunities to renegotiate some things now, knowing that we're going to be putting this out for bids down the road. There could be an interest in some of these vendors being cooperative. Observation may not be accurate. Do we need 77 copiers? Are some of these copiers just really kind of being redundant and not really serving the purpose? And I don't have an answer to that question. I don't even suggest an answer. But I think there's a lot of areas that there are still conversations to be had. And I can't say it strong enough how impressed I am with the elected officials in our county and the directors and how they bought into this. This speaks highly of them, and our taxpayers should be very appreciative of that. In our budgets, we talked about the clerk, of course, wanted 2 copiers. Somehow that needs to evolve into this conversation with that deadline in mind down the road.
Oh, sure.
And so those are my observations off the top of my head, and frankly, I have some others here, but I'm going to pass on for the moment just to try to start the conversation. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I was thinking the same thing about having Bob available on a contract basis, because he's given us a great foundation and education, but the implementation of this is very, it's going to be detail-oriented and someone knowledgeable about the copier world. And I don't want Brad's time and others' time taken up too much in the implementation here. And so I would definitely want to also consider having Bob, if you'd be interested, work with us on a contract basis.
And I think they just get together and put something together that makes
Sure.
sense and let us
Sure.
know. And
Right. Yeah, that sounds good. And just to thank you so much, Bob.
Well, thank you. I mean, I really did enjoy meeting with all of the departments and such. And again, if it was an antagonistic situation, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it, but everyone, was really appreciative of.
Oh, that's great.
how have you been received by the vendors? Did they have any observations or
I have not
comments?
spoken to a single vendor intentionally since I started this. And I asked one department not to let the vendor know that I had spoken to them because they renegotiated and got better pricing, and I didn't want that vendor thinking that.
So unless they're listening today, they're not aware of this.
Correct. And
Okay.
That's right.
And again, I may be getting my head of ourselves here, but what about the other departments, DD, mental health, some of these others that are related to us? Is it possible down the road to somehow include them in the process? There could be some issues there, and I
Yeah, we
can think
can
of
check
some of
with
them.
Eric on that.
But that's a conversation down the road. I don't think it's an immediate conversation, but
Right.
and it could maybe be part of the bidding process when we get that point.
Okay, I think, boy,
Thank you, Bob.
thank you so much.
very well
And we will recess this meeting until November 13th at 1:30 PM, when we will resume our special budget meeting.